For 8 years, Sarah received the same kind of package every month. They were always small brown boxes, carefully wrapped and addressed in her father's handwriting. Sometimes they arrived on a Monday. Sometimes on a Friday. But they always came around the same time each month. Sarah never opened a single one. She would take the box from the delivery man, carry it into her apartment, and place it inside the same old cabinet in the hallway. Then she would close the door and continue with her day as if nothing had happened. Her neighbors probably thought it was strange. Her friends certainly did. Once, her best friend asked her why she kept accepting packages from someone she refused to speak to. Sarah only answered, "Because sending them is his choice. Opening them is mine." She never explained what had happened between her and her father. It had started 8 years earlier, on the day Sarah told him that she was leaving university. Her father had worked hard all his life and believed that education was the safest road to a good future. He had saved money for years to pay for Sarah's education, even when the family did not have much. Sarah, however, had discovered that she hated what she was studying. She wanted to become a photographer. Her father thought it was an irresponsible dream. They argued for hours that night. Sarah remembered almost every word, especially the ones she wished she could forget. Her father told her that she was wasting everything he had done for her. Sarah told him that he had never really cared about what she wanted. Then her father said something that hurt more than anything else. "If you walk out of this house for that dream, don't expect me to be here when it fails." Sarah packed a bag and left that night. She never went back. At first, she expected him to call. He didn't. Then she expected him to apologize. He didn't. A month later, the first package arrived. Sarah recognized the handwriting immediately. She placed it in the cabinet without opening it. The second package came 4 weeks later. Then another. And another. For the first year, Sarah was angry every time one arrived. She thought her father was trying to control her again, even from a distance. She imagined that every box contained something he had chosen for her, something that reminded her that he still believed he knew what was best. So she refused to look inside. The packages continued. During the second year, Sarah stopped being angry. During the third year, she stopped thinking about them. By the fourth year, they had become part of her apartment. There were boxes filled with unopened questions she no longer wanted to answer. Sarah eventually became a successful photographer. Her work was published in magazines, and she traveled to different countries for assignments. She built the life she had once dreamed about. But whenever she came home, she still saw the cabinet in the hallway. And inside it were all the things her father had tried to send her. One winter morning, Sarah received a phone call from her mother. Her mother's voice sounded different. "Your father is very sick." Sarah stood completely still. For several seconds, she could not answer. Her mother told her that he had been diagnosed with a serious illness months earlier. He had not wanted Sarah to know. "He said you were happy," her mother said quietly. "He didn't want to disturb your life." Sarah sat down on the floor. After 8 years of silence, she suddenly had so many things she wanted to say that she did not know where to begin. She took the next train home. Her father's house looked smaller than she remembered. The garden was untidy, and the paint around the front door had begun to fade. Sarah stood outside for a long time before finally knocking. Her mother opened the door. Neither of them spoke. Then her mother hugged her. Sarah cried. Her father was in the bedroom. He looked much older than she remembered. His hair was almost completely gray, and his hands were thin. On the table beside his bed was a small photograph of Sarah when she was 10 years old. He looked at her and smiled. "You came." It was such a simple sentence, but Sarah began to cry again. She wanted to tell him that she was sorry. She wanted to tell him that she had been successful. She wanted to tell him that she had never stopped thinking about him. But all she could say was, "I got your packages." Her father looked confused. "What packages?" Sarah stared at him. "The ones you sent me every month." He looked toward her mother. His mother shook her head. Sarah felt a strange fear growing inside her. "Dad, what did you put in them?" Her father smiled weakly. "I don't know. I haven't sent you anything." Sarah could not understand. Her mother left the room and returned a few minutes later with an old notebook. She placed it on the bed. "It was your father who prepared them," she said. "But he stopped doing it years ago." Sarah opened the notebook. Inside were dates. Every month for the first 2 years after Sarah left, her father had written down what he wanted to send her. A book about photography. A new camera strap. A scarf because he remembered she was always cold. A photograph of their old house. A recipe for the soup she loved as a child. Small things. Nothing expensive. But then, near the end of the second year, the writing changed. The notes became shorter. Then one day, there was only one sentence. "I don't know how to talk to my daughter anymore." Sarah turned the page. There were no more notes. She looked at her father. "Then who sent the packages?" Her mother was silent. Finally, she said, "Your father asked me to stop." Sarah's heart sank. "I stopped sending them years ago." Sarah looked at the notebook again. 8 years of packages. But her father had only sent them during the first 2. She felt confused. Then her mother explained. After her father stopped, someone else had continued. Her father had never known. Sarah returned to her apartment the next morning. She stood in front of the cabinet for a long time. For 8 years, she had believed those boxes contained her father's attempts to control her life. Now she finally opened the first one. Inside was a small camera strap. Under it was a folded piece of paper. Sarah unfolded it with shaking hands. There were only 7 words. "I hope you find your own way." She opened another. A photography book. Another box contained an old family photograph. Another contained a blue scarf. Another contained a small notebook. The gifts were simple, but each one seemed to tell her something her father had never been able to say aloud. Then Sarah opened the newest package. It was different from the others. Inside was a blank notebook. On the first page, there was a message. "I don't know what to say anymore, so I will leave this page empty." Sarah stared at the words for a long time. Then she noticed something she had never thought to check. The address label on the box was not printed. It was handwritten. But the handwriting was not her father's. It was her mother's. Sarah called her mother. There was a long silence on the phone. Then her mother finally said, "Your father stopped sending them because he thought you didn't want him anymore." I couldn't stand watching him put everything into that cabinet and then walk away. Sarah closed her eyes. So you sent them? I did. Why? Her mother began to cry. Because he kept buying little things for you anyway. He would put them on the table and say, maybe someday she'll come home. I couldn't throw them away. Sarah looked at the boxes around her. For years, she had thought they were messages from a father who refused to understand her. But they had been something else. They were the things he had wanted to give her when he no longer knew how to ask her to come home. Sarah returned to her father's house that afternoon. She brought the empty notebook with her. Her father was awake when she entered his room. She sat beside his bed and placed the notebook in his hands. I think you left something unfinished, she said. He looked at the blank pages. Then he smiled. For the first time in 8 years, they talked. Not about university. Not about photography. Not about who had been right. They talked about ordinary things. His garden. Her travels. The terrible coffee she had once made when she was 12. The old dog they had when she was a child. They laughed. They cried. And when the sun began to set, Sarah took out her camera. Can I take your picture? Her father smiled. You're still taking pictures? Sarah smiled back. I'm still learning. She took the photograph. It was not a perfect photograph. Her father's hands were thin, his face was tired, and the room was filled with fading evening light. But Sarah knew immediately that it was the most important photograph she had ever taken. A few weeks later, her father passed away. Sarah kept the photograph beside her bed. She also kept the 8 years of packages. But she no longer saw them as boxes filled with things she had missed. She saw them as proof that sometimes love does not disappear when people stop speaking. Sometimes it becomes quiet. She saw them as proof that sometimes love does not disappear when people stop speaking. Sometimes, it simply becomes quiet. Sometimes, it waits patiently, hidden inside the things we are too afraid to face. Sarah finally understood that pride had kept her and her father apart for years. But somehow, despite all the silence, the love between them had never completely disappeared. It had been waiting for her all along, inside those little brown boxes, month after month, year after year. And sometimes, all it takes to find that love again is the courage to finally open the box.